Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Swipe Up, episode 222, the podcast where I share my unfiltered thoughts on the latest news and entertainment updates. I'm your host, Ray Taylor, and every Thursday I'll be bringing you a fresh perspective on a variety of topics. Don't forget to use the hashtag SwipeUpPodcast to join the conversation on social media. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the three stories. First story is about James Cameron's opinions on streaming. The second story is about a small group of visual effects artists who worked on Everything Everywhere All at Once. And my third story is how Brazil was having their own January 6th very recently. With all that said, let's get it started, shall we? With our first story, as I said, James Cameron thinks we need to go back to the theaters. His quote, "When we go to the movies, we make a deal with ourselves to have undivided attention for a couple of hours. It's about immersing yourself, choosing to commit to that ahead of time." I definitely agree with that aspect of it, right? I do agree with that aspect of his statement that when you go to a movie theater to watch a movie, you are far more focused on the movie itself. That is one of the reasons why I loved going to the movie theaters before the pandemic happened. It's so easy, especially watching a movie at home, for you to grab your phone and be distracted by your phone, or, just to pause. But you can pause the movie, so you're not really missing it, but you're definitely not watching it in the same way you would be in a movie theater. But the other side of that is you have a man who has been very successful director for a very long time and has probably not had to think about money in his life for the majority of his life. Like, what money means to James Cameron is very different than what it means to most people today. And the reality of being able to go to a movie theater and to watch a movie is almost a luxury that a lot of people just can't afford. There's a reason why movie theaters, why there's a downturn in the amount of people going to movies. There's a reason why there's only a handful of movies that actually do well in theaters. They're usually like event movies, very much like his movie is, Avatar. Here's another quote. "We're saying as a society, we need this. We need to go to the theaters. Enough with the streaming already. I'm tired of sitting on my ass." Which, that quote is stupid, first off, because you go to the theater, you're just sitting on your ass somewhere else, and you're paying a price to go somewhere else to sit on your ass, right? As a consumer, the convenience of being able to sit on my ass at home without having to pay and drive and go somewhere where the concessions are high priced as well. The convenience of being able to sit and watch and choose from a variety of films and TV, watching these things on a high definition TV with a surround system, there is far less need to go to a movie theater considering or compared to back in James Cameron's day, when he was a bit of a younger lad, when the only way to see new movies was to go to a movie theater. The only way to watch a movie in widescreen with the most crystal clear picture was to go to a movie theater. The only way to have the immersive surround sound experience was to go to a movie theater, right? Up until the late 90s, early 2000s, did I mean, early it was the 2000s, less like 20 years now, which is still a long time. But 20 years is the only amount of time where you can have a movie theater experience at home. If you I mean, everybody's got a high-def TV nowadays, so everybody's got their widescreen TV. When they're watching movies, the warning of this movie has been edited to fit your screen doesn't show up anymore. We're watching these movies unedited in their proper aspect ratio, in a lot of cases, crystal clear HD. Some people have surround sounds. I mean, so easy to get surround sounds. So many surround sounds either in a single box. You can have high-end surround sounds. You can have a sound bar that has surround sound features built in. They have redesigned speakers in a way to simulate surround sounds at home. So you get like 80% of that movie theater experience at home. So that's one major reason why people aren't going to the movie theater. Also, James Cameron has a bit of an incentive to try and convince people to go to a movie theater, considering the future of his franchise relies on them breaking records financially in theaters, which it seems like Avatar is doing. So he's got a reason to want to convince people, but I don't think he is somebody who is completely out of touch with what it's like to be a person living in this country at this time, where it's expensive. The cost of living is high. The rates at which businesses are paying people a living wage is pretty high as well. There's not a whole lot of jobs willing to pay people a living wage. Everything is going against what the reality James Cameron wants, but he just thinks it's a laziness issue. And it's insane. I just think he's completely out of touch, right? I mean, yeah, you get a better experience when you're in the movie theaters. I prefer watching movies in the movie theaters. If I could walk to a movie theater and pay, sign up for Regal Unlimited like I had before the pandemic, and there was a Regal theater within walking distance, I would still have that service, and I would try and watch as many movies in the theater as I could. But that's under very specific circumstances. I don't have the ability to drive right now, right? I'd have to borrow a car to go. I'd have to have somebody take me. But even if I did have a car, gas prices are ridiculous. If I didn't have a subscription service, buying a movie ticket I could have, for the price of one movie ticket, I can pay for a month's subscription of a streaming service that gets me access to hundreds of movies and TV shows. So I can watch a single movie one time to get this experience that is better, or I can pay for a month of Netflix that will give me hundreds of options of movies and TV shows that are good. Are there some bad ones? Sure. But I could go to a movie theater and watch Avatar 2, which I have not seen yet. Like, I could go and, where you get the 3D where I got to put glasses on, and I could have a horrible experience. And I could have just wasted a ton of money that I would have been much more happy spending on a streaming service. So it's just ridiculous. Like, he's got this mindset of somebody from like the 80s or 90s where that reality just doesn't work. And he's a guy, when the first Avatar movie came out, that was trying to push 3D again, right? Where TV manufacturers were coming out with 3D TVs. Imagine that, sitting at home, putting on glasses to watch a movie that, by the way, very little to no content in 3D at that time. I sold electronics at the time of the first Avatar movie. I saw the insane trend where almost every TV had like 3D capabilities. Some TVs, the glasses were battery powered. Imagine watching a movie. First off, heavy glasses because there's batteries in it, right? Watching at home, you got to put these battery powered glasses on that had shutters that would shutter one eye at a time, right? That synced up with the TV. That's how that 3D worked. Imagine watching a movie and your glasses dying and having to, first off, needing enough glasses for everybody that's going to be watching that program, that movie, right? The one of 3 movies that are available in 3D. Having enough glasses, and then just one person, my batteries died. So it's either, okay, you can't watch this, or we're all just watching this in 2D now. Like, it was the dumbest thing. Or you put on the polarized glasses, right? Some of the 3D TVs, you wore polarized glasses, which are similar to what you wear in a movie theater, which suck, which is one of the reasons I hate going to 3D movies in a movie theater, because I have bad eyesight and I wear actual glasses. So I have to wear these sunglasses that make everything darker on top of my prescription glasses to watch a movie that is basically, Fern Gully. It's just ridiculous. It's like, there were so many, that trend ended up ruining so many movies that were like the Avatar movie that M. Night Shyamalan made, right? Based on the cartoon Avatar. One of the reasons why that movie sucks so much, they cut so much of that movie out, is because they had to follow the trend of post-converting every movie into 3D. And because it would have taken so long, they had to cut big chunks of that movie out. The original IP that used Avatar, that's another thing that the Avatar franchise from James Cameron ruined. Right? James Cameron is responsible for so many of the worst trends in movies and in technology, and now he's complaining about the convenience of watching something at home because he needs people to, in order for him to continue to make these ridiculous movies, it is required that billions of people or billions of dollars are spent, which can only happen if they go into a movie theater. And going to a movie theater is the only way to experience these movies, the way he intended. And even that, most of the movie theaters that are displaying this Avatar 2 aren't able to do the things that he specifically did with adding, higher frame rates to certain scenes and other scenes aren't. Like, it's just ridiculous. The standard that he expects everybody to fall in line to follow along with. It's just ridiculous. So I don't know, James Cameron. The first Avatar, like one of the first podcasts I ever recorded way back when the first Avatar came out, that we reviewed, me and my co-host reviewed it. We talked about it, and it was like one of the only podcasts that my recording equipment died while recording, and we had to re-record. It was like a 3-hour long podcast, and my stuff died. I was like, I think we need to record, and they decided they stuck around to record that episode with me again, and it was a cool experience. It was cool looking 3D, but the story wasn't memorable. I've never watched the movie since that one time watching it in a movie theater. Mainly because the coolest aspect of it, the 3D aspect of it, is nearly impossible to get at home. So this movie, the sequel that comes out over a decade later, I am not at all excited. And I've heard mixed reviews of it as well. I'm sure I'll watch it when it comes out on Disney Plus or whatever, but not at all excited about Avatar. I like James Cameron movies. I don't think just because he's like the most successful director in the history of movies, right? He's got like more movies that have grossed over like $1 billion than anybody. But popularity doesn't mean quality to me at all, right? He's a very popular director. He understands how to communicate with a mass audience, right? And part of that is doing really generic things that are relatable to a mass audience. And, at some point I'll do a James Cameron top 5 and go through and watch his movies, because he hasn't directed a ton of movies. And they're great. I love Terminator 2. He does good movies, but he does, with the Aliens franchise, he turned a sci-fi horror film into an action movie. That's what he does. Terminator 2 which I think he did the first Terminator, but turned that into an action movie, right? He just turns things into action movies. I don't know. It's like I don't hold him at the same esteem that so many others do. But whatever. Don't agree with his opinions. For majority of them, I mean, I agree that going to a movie theater is the best way to watch a movie, but I don't think it's as accessible as it is. And, convenience and price are big contributors to what I do with my time. Let's take a quick break right now to talk about, are you a fan of original artwork and live events? Look no further than the Many Faces series by Ray Taylor and the weekly live stream over at youtube.com/inspired disorder. This ongoing series explores the endless possibilities of the human face through abstract ink paintings on paper, capturing unique expressions of emotion, mood, tone, and energy in just a few minimal features. Join me every Thursday at 4:20 Pacific time as I paint live. Follow the Many Faces series and discover the endless possibilities of the human face. Don't miss out on this opportunity to be part of the action and own a piece of original artwork by me, Ray Taylor. Head to youtube.com/inspired disorder every Thursday to catch the live stream, and visit inspireddisorder.com to browse and purchase the Many Faces artwork. And now, let's get back to the show. But let's move on, shall we? Let's move on to the second story. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, my number one movie from last year. 9 people, including the 2 directors, did all of the visual effects on the film. None of them had gone to school for visual effects and instead had taught themselves from online tutorials. I love this piece of trivia because it is one of the many reasons I love this film. I mean, it's a great film, the most creative film. These directors I absolutely love. Swiss Army Man, the first film they did, my favorite film of that year when that came out. Completely original. They do things from the ground up differently than everybody else. They are self-taught. Everything is so handmade, and I think that shows in every way. And I think that imbues every film they do with an immense amount of heart because it is so handmade. And I love the idea that you don't need to do things the way everybody else does, right? You can teach yourself to do things. So they only had a small team led by Zak Stoltz, a friend of the film director. Team was made up of visual effects artists who were also directors who learned effects as necessary while working on their own projects. The team wanted to keep the process personal and handmade, and so they used programs they were familiar with, like After Effects, and avoided the traditional visual effects hierarchy in order to create shots from beginning to end. The limited resources helped shape the final product, as the team had prioritized certain shots and make strategic decisions about where to put their focus from the ground up, breaking the rules. Just because something is created one way, there's an industry standard, doesn't mean that it's the only way to do a thing. In my opinion, like, I like to compare these things to like hiking as an analogy or a metaphor, right? Go on a hike, you start at a place and you have a destination spot, right? You want to get to the top of this mountain. You want to get from A to B, whatever it is. And in reality, there's an infinite amount of ways to achieve that goal, to reach that destination. Most people choose the paths that most people use. Tend to be easier, but also tend to produce the same results. You experience that hike in very much the same way that everybody else experienced that hike. You see the things on that hike in the same way, from the same perspective that everybody else sees that hike. You know it's a proven hike, so there's far less error that can happen. There's a lot less mistakes that you can make to learn from. But even if you're following a path, each individual step you take will be unique to your journey on that path. And that's the same in anything that you create, anything that you do, that you could take the industry standard way, you can take the way in which people have set up these rules of how it should be done, and you do the things, everything is made in a very similar way. Everything that is made in that very similar way tends to have a lot of similarities to each other. Nothing really stands out. You look at most superhero movies, right? There's a lot of similarities to a lot of the things that happen in those movies, versus in the hike perspective, taking a route less traveled, walking off of the path, is going to do so many things that will be beneficial, right? It's more difficult because it's not proven. You're going to run into difficult situations where you may need to backtrack. But every time something difficult happens, those are moments that you're learning, you're growing, you're understanding how to deal with new things that people who follow the path will never get that training, will never get that education or experience doing, because they've done things the easier way. So when you go off the path, it may take longer, it may be more difficult, it will be more difficult, but on that journey, you will be gaining so much more strength, so much more endurance, so much more experience and knowledge, learning, because that entire process is a learning process. So by the time you reach the destination and you've taken a different path, the growth that you've experienced in that time is exponentially more than somebody who just followed a path, somebody that just went the easy way. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I love Everything Everywhere All at Once so much, is because you see all of those differences in this movie. You see how, because it was created and produced differently from the ground up, they chose to take a path to the finished product differently than everybody else does, ended up creating something that is far more unique than anybody else has ever made, despite the story being complex, dealing with multiverses and things that a lot of different themes that we see in a lot of different things in popular culture. The way it's handled and expressed and the finished product is so different, so unique, and has so much heart, because they blazed their own trail. They created this in a way that is different from everybody else. They broke all of the rules in making this movie the way they did. And that's something that I love, even from like a podcasting standpoint, being online and looking at and being a part of like online groups of, new podcasters and people looking for advice. There are no rules when you're creating art. There's no rules to podcasting. There's no rule that says you have to have this mic, you have to use these chords, that you should be using an H4n, that you should be doing lighting in a certain way, that you should be recording in a certain way. You should be using, like, everybody thinks that they have to get the $300 Shure mic that Joe Rogan uses. So many podcasts are set up to look like and function like old radio, right? These are people taking old paths designed for a completely different technology. Whereas if you just understand modern technology, if you understand what you want your show to do, there are an infinite amount of ways to produce that using an infinite amount of combinations of technology, of tools. Very simple tools to produce high quality stuff. Right? Bare bones. Like, the thing I love about podcasting is that it doesn't take, it's super easy to do. But so many people, because they want to follow paths that other people have laid in front, that they have seen other people do, they think they need to invest in professional equipment, right? Like a $500 mic is somehow going to make their podcast better. Recording their podcast in 4K is somehow going to make their content more interesting, right? Having a studio, a separated studio with perfect soundproofing, and a producer that is working constantly to run the levels in a separate room separated by glass, right? Because they're stuck in some old radio model of how things need to be recorded. Doesn't make their show better. In fact, just ends up making them sound like a lot of other shows that are produced in that same way. So I absolutely love this aspect of Everything Everywhere at Once. Obviously, it could have ended up being a bad movie, right? One of the possibilities when you set off on your hike off a trail, just going out into the wilderness, you can get lost. You may never reach the destination. You know, having setbacks, some people don't learn from setbacks. Some people don't come back from setbacks. Some people don't dust themselves off and get back up and try a different route. Some people give up. A lot of people give up. A lot of people give up that follow the path too. But if you do make it to the end, you will have gained something that nobody who followed the path did. You will understand what you're doing from a perspective that none of them have. You will have experiences that you've experienced that none of them have. And that is a massive strength. That is a massive benefit that you can apply to everything. So I absolutely love the story. That's why I wanted to talk about it, obviously. And a personal philosophy that I've had for a long time now. You know, like people that say there's rules to doing a thing. It's like, there's just because rules exist because there's proof of concept doesn't mean that things only can be made in that way, right? That's how things evolve. Things evolve from people trying new things, from taking new paths, right? Punk music didn't exist in the 1500s, right? It took a lot of people experimenting in a lot of different ways for that to develop into a thing. And even in that, once, like the way these guys made their own trail, right? There could easily be other people that follow their steps, retrace their steps to do that same thing. But maybe it doesn't work for them. You never know. Maybe you need your own path. Play to your strengths. Anyway, I love that story. Everything Everywhere All at Once. An amazing movie. I also love the Daniels, the director duo that made it. I'm sure after all the love they're getting, I hope that Michelle Yeoh wins Best Actress. That would be amazing. She won the Golden Globe. I'm sure they're going to be able to make whatever movies they want. I mean, last year that movie just it blew up. It was, I think, became the most profitable A24 movie in the history of that company. So I think good things for them, and I hope And I doubt it will change them. I doubt it will, right? Because that's just why would they change? Why would they change to do the boring thing, right? When they already, they can do these things bare bones and in a way where they don't need massive, it becomes way more personal. They have way more control over the thing when you're not going through these old-timey procedures. Anyway, love it. Want nothing but the best for them. Can't wait to see whatever they do next. Let's take a quick break from this episode to talk about Attention all Ray Taylor Show fans! We're excited to announce we've just released a line of exclusive merchandise featuring original artwork inspired by the show. Our high-quality shirts and biodegradable phone cases are a perfect way to show your support for the show and make a great gift for any fan. Plus, with each purchase, you'll be helping us continue to bring you great content. So don't wait. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com now and check out the full collection. Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll show your support by grabbing some Ray Taylor Show merchandise today. And now, let's get back to the show. Let's move on to the final story. That is a story in Brazil that mirrors a lot of what is happened in this country and also involves a lot of the same people. Thousands of protesters stormed government buildings in the capital of Brazil, Brasília, to protest the presidency of Lula da Silva, who was sworn in on January 1st. He is the left-leaning president who beat out the far-right president, who is very much like Trump, and the people who helped Trump try to steal the election, Steve Bannon and the other guys that are involved. I forget the guy that looks like the Joker or whatever, the Penguin, the guy that's got like the old guy that's got like the flat head, who got pardoned, should be in prison, but Trump pardoned him. They are basically having the guy who lost follow their playbook, deny that he lost the election, say that the other guy stole it. And what happened on January 6th in a lot of ways is what happened here in Brazil, where they went in and to a bunch of different buildings. Let's see here. The country's former leader, far-right Jair Bolsonaro, was falsely claimed that Lula had stolen the election and questioned the legitimacy of Brazilian election system. He also has refused to concede the election. So, beat for beat, doing exactly what Trump did. Protesters defaced artwork and may very well have hurt the buildings themselves, which were designed by Oscar Niemeyer, an iconic modernist architect. Brazilian officials expect to be able to restore all but one of the objects, a clock by Balzahar Martino that had been given by France to King Dom Huahao the Fifth during the 17th century. A bunch of artwork has been damaged. Sculptures, artwork, architecture, stained glass windows. The value of what's been destroyed is incalculable because they are mostly historical. They have historical. They're not just magical pictures. They're historical artifacts in a lot of ways. On Twitter, Bolsonaro said the destruction and invasion of public buildings like what occurred today was not acceptable, but he stopped short of decrying the protests altogether. Right? He's happy they're protesting. He's just like, I don't want to touch the fact that they are destroying property, right? Same thing with like Trump. He's like, I'm glad they did the thing, but I didn't want them to actually poop on her desk or whatever, And this story is interesting not only because they are following the Trump playbook, not only because the people who encourage Trump to do that in America are literally the same people behind this president doing the exact same thing, but also the connection between what's been happening with the climate protests defacing artwork in comparison to what happened in Brazil, which I think are 1,000% different. The climate protests in the U.S., one, the meaning for the protests, the impetus for these protests are completely different. You have people trying to wake the world up into realizing that we are making this planet inhabitable by our actions, right? So literally trying to save humanity. The other group of people are just adult crybabies who want a fascist leader in their country, right? Religious extremists, they prefer a fascist, all of the same delusional reasons the right-wing people of America want Trump to be president, right? They want a fascist. They want him as a dictator. They want fascism to be the rule of the land. So the differences there completely different. But also the protests themselves. The climate protesters are defacing artwork in a way where the artwork itself is not being damaged at all. All of the paintings that have had mashed potatoes and tomato soup and these things, thrown on them are all covered by glass. They are all protected pieces of artwork that have not been damaged, right? Despite the anger people may have, this insane anger as if they are all of a sudden the protectors of artwork, right? These magical paintings made by people a long time ago that are no longer able to profit off of their art, right? That are just in museums, right? So, and labeled as such because somebody labeled it as such, not being damaged at all, doing a great job, doing exactly what its intended was to get attention to this bigger issue of these people and corporations making the planet we live on less and less habitable. Versus what happened by these fascists in Brazil who are literally destroying paintings, destroying architecture, destroying stained glass mirrors, sculptures. They are actually destroying these things in the name of fascism. So those two aspects could not be further apart. And that's why what these people are doing in Brazil is absolutely disgusting versus what these climate scientists are doing, I highly support. As an artist, one of these events disgusts me because it's pointless destruction of art for a cause that is horrible to humans, only makes human life worse. Fascism, right? So destroying art in the name of fascism, absolutely disgusting. And then making people open their eyes to the climate by covering the glass that's protecting a painting with a cake, tomato soup. They are night and day different. And I'm sure as the only people who are active and verbal and loud on comment sections, just as they were crying in defense of the Proud Boys in last week's podcast, I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to disagree with my opinions and say that there's no difference. And to those people, I just say, yeah, just waste your time writing in the comments, and chances are I'll just delete them if I even feel like it. But it's disgusting. The fact that Trump is still free, the fact that these people that helped Trump are free to continue to do this in other countries, trying to encourage the overthrowing of the election in Brazil, is just disgusting, man. These people need to be behind bars. They need to be in cages. There needs to be repercussions for these people at a level that you see for normal humans doing petty crime. Like, they aren't even punished to that extent. There is zero punishment for most of these horrible people that are doing everything they can to just make life a living hell for the people who do all the work. But that's it. That's all I want to say about that. Let's do some shout outs and get out of here, shall we? Shout out to IGN.com, shout out /film, shout out Art News, but most importantly, shout out to you. I want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Swipe Up. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts and insights on the latest news and entertainment updates. Don't forget to join the conversation online on social media by using the hashtag #SwipeUpPodcast. I'll see you next Thursday for more unfiltered opinions on the news and fresh perspectives on the updates.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.